sponsored in part by Pediatric Associates of Dallas. Pediatric Associates of Dallas has been providing excellence in pediatric medicine since 1971. PAD has locations in Dallas and Plano and is now open 7 days a week because taking care of kids is what we do.
The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional legal advice, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your attorney, advocate, physician, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical or educational concerns.
Welcome to another episode of Empower Dyslexia. We are a show that talks about dyslexia and related disorders. And I am one of your co-hosts, Rachel Dreiling Chambers.
And I'm Stephen Yearout.
Yes. So on this show, we talk about dyslexia and related disorders, research, interventions. We talk to experts in the field. We also talk about policy at a state and federal level. And we also have people that come on the show to talk about their own personal experiences. So thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the show.
Well, we got big news, as we've been talking about over the last couple of shows. We have now available for you to listen to our podcast on all of these platforms. Look at that. We've got iTunes, we've got Google Play, got
Spotify,
Google, Stitcher, Alexa,
Twitch.
I put a video online the other day that talks about, or that showed, I said, hey, Google, play Empower Dyslexia. Mm-hmm. And it says, now playing Empower Dyslexia, show number whatever it was, right? It was pretty interesting.
That is really cool. I think that's cool.
Anyway, tune in. Make sure that you subscribe and like. If you find this information valuable to you, please make sure that you write us a review on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll be here to pass on the information.
Yes, and please, write us a review. That would be really nice too. Subscribe.
Yeah, it helps us with our sponsors.
It does. It helps us with our sponsors, and that would be nice. Okay, so today, I don't want to sound okay. So I have some bad news.
Well, we had some news come out of Austin.
Yeah, we had some news come out of Austin last night. I was told about it just, yesterday morning. So as well, you may or may not know, but the TEA, the Texas Education Agency, fills out an application each year to apply for IDEA grants up to $1 billion.
So that's federal money for special education.
Correct. Yeah. So, and they do that every year. So, and as we've mentioned before on the show, that Texas and the TEA were found in violation of breaking the federal law IDEA back in 2017. So on this application, which concerns me, as well as a whole slew of other people, is that on the application, they said that they could not ensure FAPE, which is free, appropriate public education.
So if you want to understand exactly what FAPE is from the federal level, mm-hmm. If you look on our Facebook page, I actually put a link and the definition of FAPE mm-hmm. on our Facebook page, so you can read all about it, or you can go Google
that is.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you can understand why this is so important.
Yeah. Also, they said that they could not insure this year child find, which we all know what tell them what child find.
So child find is was put in place to make sure that all students, kindergarten first grade, are screened for dyslexia or learning disabilities. Again, this is screening only. This is not a full-blown evaluation. However, let me add a little piece to this. So with TEA saying that they are not confident or they won't be able to provide FAPE, or free appropriate education, public education, if think about it like this. If the school came to you or came to the public and said, hey, Mr. and Mrs. whatever, we are not going to be able to teach your kids how to read, or we're not going to be able to teach your kids how to do math, or whatever the situation is, we would have mutiny on our hands. This is what they're doing when they say this for the special education population and 504 population. They're saying we're not going to guarantee or cannot guarantee that we're going to be able to provide, or each ISD or charter school within inside of Texas is going to provide your free and appropriate,
or even try to find those
public
children.
Education, or even be able to find them. This is unacceptable.
That's child find. If they go and actively look for kids who may need services. So basically they're still violating federal law. And also, I am on the Special Education Continuing Advisory Committee. I personally mentioned that we would like to see the application before they turn it in so we could review it and advise.
Being that you're on the advisory committee.
Because I'm on the advisory committee with 17 other people, although y'all, 3 people, I think we're down 4 people. So if you want to apply, contact me, instant message me on Facebook, and I will send you an application, and you will send it off to the governor's office. We need more people on the committee to make us a complete 17-member committee again. So yeah, we didn't get to see the application, nor did they talk about it with us at our last meeting, that they were in the process of filling it out. So that's disappointing. So last thing I wanted to tell you, okay, so our show is going on right now at 11, right? You can go down to Austin right now. If you live in Austin, that's even better. And get to the TEA building, which is at 1701 North Congress in room 11 or 111. Okay, so room 111 on 1701 North Congress in Austin. You will be able to do a 3-minute testimony as to, in regards to this application for IDEA funding. So also, if you're not able to be down in Austin, you can submit an email to TEA no later than April 30th of this year. We will provide that email on our Facebook page.
That link. Yeah.
That link and the email that you need so you can let your voices be heard. So
we have failed our kids for far too long. We keep getting told that this is a big ship, that it's going to take a long time to turn around. It's this, it's that. Enough of the excuses. We want the services that our kids are
should
deserved.
Be guaranteed by federal law.
What they deserved, what they're guaranteed by federal law, and we want our kids to be successful. We're not giving our kids to our school system. I mean, we're mandated to have our kids in school, but the schools aren't mandated to make sure that they provide the right education for these kids. It's unacceptable. Please let your voice be heard. We want to work with the TEA. We want to work with our state and local government. We want to work with the federal government. But when you tie our hands and say that you are not or you can't do something that is federally mandated, then we have an issue.
Yeah, there's a big issue there.
So, please make sure that you keep your ear open over this. We'll be posting stuff on our Facebook and sharing. We also shared Disability Rights Texas. They did an update last night. We shared it.
Stephen Aluman.
Yeah, we shared it
Texas.
This morning. We'll go ahead and share it again.
If he has any other updates, we'll put it on our Facebook page, and you can follow there as well. Or you can just get on Disability Rights Texas Facebook page and and follow them there as well.
So
lots of people concerned about this.
I mean, this is very, very important. Please help us get the word out. Let's make sure that these kids don't fall through the cracks and get the help get the help they need.
Yeah.
So,
okay. I just clapped too loud, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so today's topic, we're really excited.
Well, we were talking about child fine, right?
Yes.
And child fine, in the Dyslexia Handbook within Texas, we actually have a section in there that talks about screeners. And that's part of child fine, correct? Mm-hmm. So our guest today has developed technology in order to do just that.
Mm-hmm. A screening tool.
A screening tool that is effective, very effective. Mm-hmm. And I'll let him explain a little bit more about that.
I can't wait to hear what he has to say.
That's one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about this, because of child fine and because it's in our Dyslexia Handbook that the districts must go out there and find these kids, right?
That's what the law says.
So we're bringing an application or a product to our viewing audience to go out and say, hey, look, this is what we want for our districts. That will do just that. That will help these schools become in compliance with the law, right?
Right.
So
here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah. So today's topic, we're going to be talking, about that, and definitely about that, which is really cool. Dyslexia worldwide, right? So today I will introduce our guest here. If I'm going to try to say his name the best I can. It's Gustaf Öqvist Seimyr.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, I butchered that. Will you please say your name again so people know?
Yeah, my name is Gustaf Öqvist Seimyr.
I was close.
I was close.
Not really.
My name is Swedish and I'm from Sweden. I'm a researcher in language and reading at Karolinska Institute, which is a medical university in Sweden. We are, I think, most famous for awarding the Nobel Prize in medicine. That's our call to fame. But
yes, that's awesome.
At Karolinska, I've been involved in developing, as Steven said, a new screening method in our research, which has become a company further on, which is called Lexplore, which I'm one of the co-founder of.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, good.
So,
welcome to the show.
Yeah,
thank you. So, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All the way from Sweden, you guys. I can't believe that. So I'm glad to have you in the studio today.
Yeah, so I found Gustaf by when I first started my journey trying to figure out how do I get my child help. I was up at, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I was in the wormhole of Google trying to figure out any and everything that I can find to get help or to see if there's anything else we could do, right? And I came across this it's a medical report, medical study.
It's a study.
So a medical study where they talked about eye tracking. And I read through, of course, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a researcher. So, layman, I'm reading through it and I'm like, wow, this sounds amazing. And this helps me understand why when I read, my eye kind of, moves around on the page. So I'm like, okay, so obviously I don't speak Swedish or, what's the language? I'm sorry.
It's Swedish.
Okay, I don't speak Swedish and hopefully they speak English, but I'm going to start emailing. And I literally went down every researcher on that paper and emailed everyone that I could find. And I was like, well, that's, kind of a shot in the dark. And then all of a sudden it was, 2 o'clock in the morning here, and Gustaf instant messaged me back, hi. And I was like, who's it? Oh, that's who it is. And so we started talking about 2 years ago and just have carried on this relationship back and forth, talking about his product and dyslexia and how we can, better use that technology. Because if this is out there, we need to be using it, right? So can you talk a little bit about the research that was done before the company, right? Before Lexplore was founded. But the background story is pretty amazing to me.
Yeah. This research actually dates back back about 40 years.
40 years.
40 years. And it was started in a county in Sweden called Kronoberg, where they picked out 100 children with reading difficulties and not dyslexia. That term didn't really exist back then, but with difficulties. And then they had about 100 controls, which were children in the same classes with the same, so as close together as possible. And they did vision screenings on these children, because that was one of the hypotheses of that study, that, okay, could dyslexia or reading difficulties be a vision problem? More like, so they did all the things you do when you look at vision, do the
So
different
eye
kind of
testing,
yes.
color.
It was around that same time that the whole dyslexia is a vision problem. So what they're
Right.
doing, so just so our viewers understand, what they were doing is they were eliminating all of the possible effects of what they think dyslexia is. So it's not a vision problem, it's not a focus problem, it's not a this,
Absolutely,
it's not a,
and there were a set of papers coming out from Sweden at that time, written amongst others by my professors, which were, I mean, they more or less proved that no, this is not a vision problem. Of course, you need to have good vision to be able to read, but that's a different problem.
Right.
So
Right.
this is a language problem, and then I could show that. The interesting thing that happened later is that they also did eye movement recordings on these children, sort of to look at different kind of eye movements during reading and other tasks to eliminate that as an issue. But these were stored on tapes at the university and more or less forgotten for a while. They continued, however, to follow these children actually all the way up until today, and looked at their grades, their life outcomes.
Success.
Exactly. And I mean, you could see vast differences between these groups. I mean, when nothing else was, you
So
know.
the differences between the kids that had the reading challenge, the reading challenge
Yes.
group, and the control study, which is the neurotypical, there's nothing wrong with their
Right.
reading.
Yeah. And
there was a
And
vast
it was
difference
for
between
40
those.
years.
in their in
their
their life
outcomes,
outcomes, of course. I mean, those with reading difficulties had a larger risk, or they actually experienced more depression and social issues as well. I mean, which is something that we know now about.
Did you like see if like how many were did they get jobs afterwards? Did they or did they? I mean,
Yeah, all of these things, and I mean, you could very
or
clearly
go into
see in
prison
this.
system or
Yeah, not many of them did, luckily.
Okay,
but,
good.
Yeah, but absolutely, you could see that they didn't move as far as the others.
Yeah.
They didn't. They get more kids earlier. I mean, all these things. There's nothing wrong with having kids earlier, but
Right.
it shouldn't be
they
just.
didn't carry on their education.
No, absolutely. And if you look at, I mean, higher education, it's absolutely clear that this group did not for good
Because they
reasons,
had
of
hard
course.
time
Because
reading.
yeah, but and here's the interesting thing then, that we managed to get our hands on these recordings, these tapes. About 5 years ago, we just had a meeting with researchers in Sweden, and we talked about dyslexia, and I'm interested in eye movements, and they said, okay, we have this data set lying around in our basement. So we managed to convert those tapes, and now we really had recordings of children early, which we know the outcomes of, and that's so valuable.
Yeah.
Because now we can use statistical methods that weren't available 30, 40 years ago. Today we have what we call machine learning, which is a part of AI, where you use a lot of statistical power to be able to make predictions. But you need to have you need to know the outcome for at least a part of the data set. And here we did have that. And by developing these models, we could see really early on that we could make predictions with a really good accuracy, both in terms of sensitivity, actually picking out those children which had these difficulties, and specificity. That's, I mean, so when we say that they don't have difficulties, they actually didn't. So that's the balance between sensitivity and specificity is really important in terms of accuracy.
When you're saying sensitivity, Here we call it basically red flags. In your program or your methodology is a screening tool that says this child has this type of trait or this type of behavior, therefore you need to take further steps in testing or require further testing in order to find out exactly what is going on. What we're doing is making sure that you understand that this child presents as what we would say has a child of a learning disability or reading difficulties. So you need to further test. You need to further look into it.
Absolutely. I mean, this method, it doesn't diagnose, but it's really good at sort of detecting. But then you need to figure out what the problem is, and that's because you have to put the right kind of interventions in place. And it doesn't have to be dyslexia, it can be other things. But to figure that out, of course, you need to do a further assessment. This is a first step, but it's important in that first step that it is accurate so that you can afford to actually do all the assessments for those children that need, and don't spend the resources on children that are very likely not to have difficulties later.
Right.
And we could see the potential for this methodology. Now it was on data that was quite far back in time, and it was recorded in a lab, so we didn't really know if this would translate into something that could be used in schools. And of course, just having data from 200 children is not very much.
Yeah, it's not a huge study.
It's not a huge study.
But it's a good start.
It's a good start, and the good thing about it was that, it was longitudinal data, and it was very controlled, but really a good start. So the next step we did was doing a much larger study with about 3,000 children, where we actually brought eye tracking equipment out to schools and developed a quite quick procedure where they read letters, read a short passage of text, and then we get an outcome. Here, of course.
What was your age group of your test subjects?
From first, second, and third grade.
Okay,
so
first,
we
second,
knew
third.
that this could work from the longitudinal data in third grade, but of course we want to find these children as early as possible. I mean,
and that's one of the things that we preach all the time is early intervention is the key to success with these children.
It is.
The longer time that you wait to get these children intervention, the bigger that gap grows, and the less likely that you're going to be able to close it.
Yeah,
so
and catch up.
and that's the reason why we have the law child find.
Correct.
So you talked about the percentage of accuracy that your data has. Can you tell our viewers something about
Absolutely.
that?
On the longitudinal data, we could achieve an accuracy of about 96%, and that's high. It's really high, and almost it's quite close to sort of a theoretical ceiling of this kind of methodology.
that's
So
really
96%
Accuracy.
Accuracy rate.
Yes, and that's really high. These findings have actually been replicated in other studies. It's not just about it. I mean, this way of doing
That's
it
a
really
compliment, right?
It is. It is actually.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, so my, I'll just throw this out there. How many of the tests that we perform on our kids now can say that I can give you 90%, 96%, or even in the 90s% accuracy rate, whether that child is going to be successful or not, or that child has a learning disability or not? A screening tool. I'm not talking about diagnostic testing. I'm talking about a screening tool. We don't have anything like that I know of that can do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
That's amazing.
The accuracy of the other screening tests
but-
out there.
but-
I mean, they're delivered by people,
And
not.
I'm not even talking about screening tests. I'm just talking about that type of test, medically or not. If it's just a screening tool that's going to say, oh yeah, that's that.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one thing that is important to know when we are talking about this 96% is that here we did a binary classification, so we had two groups that were quite well defined, and we think about reading difficulties, or really along a normal distribution or a bell-shaped curve, and in this case, these two groups are a bit separated, which maybe made it easier for the software to. So instead, when we look at the larger data set, there we have children from all over the whole spectrum. There we can see that we have an accuracy around 85, but then we do a different kind of analysis, because now we don't just pick out if you're in a risk group or not. We actually try to pick out their percentile score, or where they are at the normal distribution, which is a harder problem. But still, having that information after just a short test is really promising. It is.
And how long is the test?
It takes about 2 to 3 minutes per child. Which
2
is,
to 3 minutes per child.
Yeah.
And how many times do they do the test? Just one time, or?
They do the test one time, but we encourage them to do it around 3 times per year.
3 times for accuracy, or 3 times a year?
Yeah,
Okay.
just to look at their progress. And
Oh, that's
So
important.
let's put the slide up, and let's talk through slide 1. Let's put this up and give our viewers an understanding of what this is.
Yeah, so there it is.
So
Yeah.
the left side is neurotypical child, neurotypical reading. Right side is a child that has reading
reading
difficulties.
problem.
Absolutely. And
So can you explain what's being seen here?
Yeah, what we're seeing is 2 children reading the same passage, and we have visualizations with circles and dashes. And the circles represent the fixation durations, where we actually pause and process the word. And for the typically developing child here, we can see that these are quite small, so it's shorter durations, and then the dashes represent the movements. And the reason for why it looks like this when we are reading is that we only have clear vision in very narrow part of our visual field. So to be able to pick out the words, we need to focus at them one at a time. And this makes eye movement, this is what makes this possible, because what the eye movement pattern reflects is actually the linguistic processing, or the language processing. So by looking at these circles and dashes, you get an insight into the process. And for the children with difficulties, in this case, we showed an image where there were quite large circles, and you can actually see very clearly that the child is struggling.
So it's measuring reading reading fluency.
Reading fluency.
And it's measuring decoding.
It does.
And then you can, from what I was seeing, you can see where that child has skipped a word
And gone back.
Because he's
try
trying to
to
figure
figure it
out
out.
what the context of the sentence is, because he knew that I didn't know what that word was.
Yeah.
He waited too long, or she waited too long, and then they come back to it and try to figure it out.
Right.
So for our audio listeners, for our listeners out there who couldn't see that, it's basically 2 passages in Sweden, so not Swedish, not English, and the child on the left was reading just fine, and they got done with it within 10 seconds,
10, 20 seconds.
Yeah, very quickly, and then the child on the right. And okay, so the child on the left, when they were trying to sound out a word, it would just have a little circle of where they were trying to, at the beginning of the word, where they're trying to sound out the word and move on, sound out the word and move on. And the circle would only get to be about a dime size, maybe a quarter at most. Now, when you look at the child on the right who has the reading difficulties, some of these circles
Take up the entire passage.
Yes, they're huge.
Well, and if you look at,
and it
look
took
at
what, 3 times the amount of time for this child, or 4 times? I didn't count.
Yeah, but in this case, I mean, it's quite evident, and
It's
it's quite
very
evident.
evident.
You could use a stopwatch as well, really. This is in 3rd grade, and here we have a clear difference. However, when you have children closer to each other, within possibly the risk or no risk, or when you look at children who has just started learning to read, it's much harder to look just at the visualization. The visualization is still gives you a lot of information, it's powerful, but it's harder just from the visualization to do a decision. And that's where the machine learning and these statistical algorithms come into play, because what they use is all of the informations from these circles or dashes of this classification and movement.
Again, this is just one piece of the entire
What would go into it? Entire evaluation.
Evaluation on that child. We're not saying that this is the end all be all. Yeah, that kid's got
They just need to have further testing.
Right. This is one piece of evidence that you need to collect in order to pass this child to the next stage, whether it's testing or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Or how they're progressing with their intervention.
That was the next thing I was going to say, and that's
cool.
what when Gustaf got here yesterday, and we went around and had some meetings, and that was the part of the thing that the more and more I heard him talk about this, that I got excited about, because now as a parent, I have factual, visual data that says this is where my child started
with their intervention.
In their intervention. This is where they are now.
And look at that growth.
Right. Or not. And now I
not.
can say we need to be looking at a different program, because this program obviously is not working for my child.
Right.
Or at the very end, when the ISD says
And
your child
they're ready
has
to graduate,
graduated the program
Graduate
because
that child.
they've spent enough time in it. And we do another series of screening like this. I can go, yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not, because they're still back here.
So this
But they should be reading right like here with the little circles, not the big
right. We need this
silver
as a
dollar
tool,
or
right. This is just another set of data, another tool that we can use to measure where this child is and where we need
Which
to be.
I think that part
it's
alone would be so helpful.
Well,
I mean, now we have a tool that the teachers can use, and they get a report on. They can also look at the visualizations, but they also get a percentile score of the child's reading ability. We also measure their comprehension, reading comprehension, so they get that. But really, you should look at it as a starting point for discussion,
right?
Rather
Most
than
definitely.
So let's look at the data points that a teacher or a parent, whoever's looking at the data. Slide 2. So this is the Lexplore website or portal that you that you're able to come in and actually look at the data.
Oh.
And can you kind of explain what we're looking at here?
yes.
So what's the circle?
The circle
Let's start out with the circle.
Okay, we have a circle. This one shows the proportions of the student. I think this is a class that have different where they are. So we classify them into 5 groups.
Okay.
One below the 10th percentile, we call it a risk or reading.
Are they the red?
They are a red, yes.
They're the red.
Absolutely.
Yeah, red means not good.
Yeah, then you have next 15% that's sort of lower than average. Maybe not risk, but definitely try
Struggling.
to keep. Yeah,
To
yes.
stay afloat, yeah.
Stay afloat and possibly keep an eye on.
Right. The kids we would put in RTI.
Yes.
Yes, and then you have.
That's a good one, yeah.
And of course, you have the 50% that are just average, exactly where they should be. And then on the opposite side, you have the children which are have better reading ability, because I mean it goes both ways.
The other side of the bell curve.
Exactly, and these children may need additional support, but in other ways, they may maybe need more difficult reading material or different kind of instructions. So showing that is also important.
Absolutely.
Rather than just saying, you're
fine.
Yeah.
Right, you're not having problems.
Exactly.
Continue. Or maybe we could challenge you more.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
Say, well, you're doing so great. You're reading so fast and comprehending so much. Why don't you go on to this level of reading? Yeah.
And then one of the strengths, I think, with the method that we have at Lexplore is that we can aggregate this information from class level to school level to district level to give an overview of how the reading ability looks at the different grades at different schools. And there are usually quite large differences, given demographics, given other issues between schools, but there can also be large differences even between classes, which is really interesting. I mean, because then in a school they may need to put more resources and help in some classes for them to.
Maybe that teacher needs some extra support, or maybe that teacher needs some extra training on the science of reading if they're having that issue. I mean, like you said, at that point, it's a discussion.
It's
mechanism,
a discussion, yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
We measure a lot of this stuff now, but we don't. I don't think that we measure it like this, with factual data that we can visualize like that. I mean, we have a couple of other tools that the schools use. One of the other things that I thought was really interesting that you talked about yesterday was the ability to record audio of that student reading. So now you have, this is where my students started, middle, end, and you have a audio version of them reading.
To see how their fluency
Right.
is.
So you see the
how
fluency,
they're
how they're progressing, and you have a visual aspect of it with the graph with the dots or the circles.
And I think the audio part is actually very important because it's not always the teacher that does the testing. It can be an assistant or someone else at the school. You don't have to be highly qualified.
Okay.
But the person that does the testing, I mean, the teacher can maybe has classes as usual. But then when the teacher looks at the results, okay, you can see the visualizations. But with the sound recording, that becomes so much powerful because now you can make different kinds of qualitative interpret. I mean, this kid didn't have the best morning. And that teacher will, by listening to that, sort of be able to figure that out, hopefully, or at least.
It's like, well, maybe Johnny or Sally, didn't get enough sleep last night, and maybe we should retest her tomorrow when she's fresh, and maybe she'll do better.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, but that's
because that doesn't sound like her reading in class normally.
Exactly.
Something
like yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, the teachers are the ones that are closest to the children,
yes,
so
they're with the children
they have
all day,
a lot.
So they know them.
They have a lot of information and possibly gut feelings about their kids, which is important.
Well, they are that important piece of the partnering in education that Rachel and I talk about all the time. The other thing that I like is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like you can do this screening over and over and over and over again. It doesn't matter if it's 1 week intervals or 6 months intervals or whatever. And the reason why I'm saying that is because like if we send somebody for a diagnostic testing, you can't use the same test within 6 months.
Right.
So it looks like on this, because we're only reading a passage.
Yeah.
It's typical reading. You've taken away the stigma of, hey, Sally, Johnny, we're going to go in here, take this test, and the stress of it. And it boils it down to, hey, can you please read this for me?
Yep.
Yes. So they're not stressed about
Right.
taking a whole day of testing.
Yeah.
And, or.
Hey, this is going to take 5 seconds. Can you read this for me real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we discovered when we developed this screening tool is that the kids actually like it.
They like it.
But of course not. It doesn't feel like a test for them. It feels like, okay.
Let me read this on the iPad.
And
it's
a little
on
bit,
an iPad or something like an iPad.
Yeah, it's on a computer display. It can be a portable or just an extra display.
Okay. Just a screen.
Just a screen.
Okay.
Just a screen, and it's like a loosely, I'm saying loosely from a description of like a webcam. It's a specialized type of camera, and I equated it to kind of the Xbox One Connect because it reads it reads the pattern of your eye where your eye is moving. So
Gotcha.
it's more than just a web camera.
Yeah.
Right. It's got more
Specialized
technology to
Okay.
it.
Yeah, it's a small device you put under the display.
Oh, okay.
But you need some hardware to get this to work. It's not hugely expensive. I mean, the prices for these has dropped amazingly much during the last years because, I mean, this was research equipment not long ago, and now it's more of a consumer product. At least, I mean, they use these devices in gaming, for example, to look at.
That is something I know nothing about, but I've heard about.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, this technology that's enabling this, it's becoming cheaper and more. It's more finding the use cases for it, and I mean, if you find good ways to use it in interaction with computers, it's probably going to be built in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's that
We'll probably get there in the next 6 months.
Yeah,
The
maybe.
way that technology goes, right? Everything's new every 6 months or so. So tell us kind of what's going on in Sweden. We'd like to know, like, we've told you kind of about, especially like what we said earlier in the show, kind of what we're going through, our growing pains, I guess, if you will, in Texas. And I've heard elsewhere around the state as well. We're just struggling with our children who are reading challenged, or who may also have dyslexia and other related disorders with ADHD, dysgraphia, all of those. What is it like for those students in Sweden?
Or internationally, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think.
What have you seen and
I think
heard?
yes, I think the problem I'm hearing what you're talking about is all too familiar, because I think this is what it really looks like in most countries, and Sweden is no exception.
Mm-hmm.
The Swedish school system is, in a way, quite decentralized in that the counties or municipalities have. They are the ones providing the education out of guidelines from the state, but they have a quite large freedom in how they
So it's like here.
do. Yeah, it's like not too different from here, and it varies a lot depending on school, which kind of testing they do and what kind of support they offer. It's in many cases up to the parents to sort of push for
Advocate for their child.
Advocate for the child, or if you're really lucky and have an excellent teacher, she will advocate. It can actually go both ways. Sometimes the teacher wants to that the child should get more assessment, but the parents sort of hold back. So that, I think that's similar as well.
Yeah,
that can happen.
very
What's
similar to what we
what's
have.
amazing to me is the more and more we talk to people around the world, this is a world problem. This is a people problem. This is not something that is only in Texas or only in the
Right.
United States. I mean, the more and more I talk to you, you know, you're telling me you're having the exact same problems. And the parents in Sweden and other countries in the UK and everywhere else are having the exact same problem. So my question is, at what point do we understand that we're having the same problem across the globe?
And it's been going on for years.
And decide to
Decades.
say, let's help these kids.
Right.
Let's make sure that these kids get the help that they need, the appropriate accommodations, the appropriate intervention, make sure that they're successful so we can grow all together.
Yeah.
Right? We're tired of we talk all the time about people being poor. We talk all the time about people going to prison. We talk about uneducated
Dropouts.
people and dropouts. We talk in reading programs and all of these things are important, but if you don't start it where the problem is,
And identifying.
you'll never get to the end result.
Yeah.
Nowhere. It doesn't matter if it's in Sweden or the United States.
Absolutely, and I mean, identification is of course important, but you need to to do something about the problem. Just playing the waiting game, I think it's called here as well. It's not gonna.
Well,
you have an X-ray because your arm's broken. Yep, your arm's broken, but we're not going to do anything about it.
Right. Sorry. Or not even a sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Go on.
but I think something very positive, and that's probably the last 10 years. The awareness of reading difficulties and dyslexia is much higher, and that's, I think, very positive. Of
Yes.
course, awareness doesn't solve the problem in itself.
No, we have to do something.
But we're talking about dyslexia way more than what we used to
Oh,
because it was shame.
Yeah.
We didn't want to talk about it. We didn't want to say our kids had dyslexia because we didn't want people to look at our children as being stupid.
Right.
I mean, I'll just be blunt about it.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that's what it is.
yeah, but
you
the
know, we were
notion-
ashamed. We didn't want our kids to be labeled with dyslexia or being special ed or being dumb, because that's what historically it looked like, right? So now I think with the awareness that's going on and how much we're talking about it, you know, I think that stigma is starting to diminish a little bit.
I hope so. I
So-
hope so. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We have
Thank you.
enjoyed having you. Like a guy all the way from Sweden.
Thank you for having me. It's
Dr.
been great.
I'm going to say it again. Dr. Seimyr.
Right.
I said it right that time?
Right.
Or no, Gustaf
Öqvist Seimyr.
Why? Gustaf
Öqvist Seimyr.
Thank you. We appreciate your research. We appreciate your new tool, and we hope that it gets implemented into schools everywhere. And
I'm going to put the slides that you shared with us, including your video, on our website, www.empowerdyslexia.info. That way, if anybody wants to go there and see what we were talking about, see the video that you have, that's amazing. It's kind of a demo of a child taking or in the middle of the assessment. I'll also put your contact information on our website, so if anybody wants to contact Gustaf and talk more about Lexplore and the benefits that it can have in your school system or school district, please reach out to them. That's
good.
Do you have anything else that you would like to speak on? Tell us about. You're now in the United States, right?
Right.
And you're doing a couple pilots in the United States.
Oh,
we have launched in the States. We have a few customers, primarily charter schools, but we are looking into But of course, we are looking into public schools as well. But we have started here. We also have operations in the UK and in Sweden, of course. So we're starting to get out there.
Good.
And really, it's been a pleasure being here. And as you said, if anyone else has questions, just reach out.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
They will. I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We hope you'd enjoy this episode, and tune in next week. We will have somebody wonderful on. Who's coming on next week?
I believe
Daphne. Is it Daphne? Daphne. No, I thought it was Dr. Tim Conway. Well, anyways, next week we'll either have Daphne Corder, who is an advocate.
It's Daphne.
Okay, we're going to have Daphne. I got the thumbs up. It's Daphne. And she's going to go talk about giving interventions with fidelity. So that's important.
And she's also going to speak on how to be an effective advocate
and advocating
for your child.
Yeah.
So we're also going to touch on things like when it's time to actually have to go out and hire an advocate,
find an advocate,
an attorney, or how you as a parent can properly advocate for your child along with.
It's going to be a great show.
Yes.
So don't miss it. Okay?
Remember that you can hear us on all of our favorite platforms: iTunes, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Alexa, AnyPod, TuneIn. We're everywhere.
Yeah, we're everywhere.
Make sure that you like us, subscribe to us, leave us a comment. We're here to try to help bring the most relevant and appropriate information to our parents and educators to try to navigate some of this water, because a lot of times it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yes.
There's so much information and you don't know what to do with what. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why we're here, and we want to make sure that we can help as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. And also, if you want to have your child evaluated, we do have letters on our website, empowerdyslexia.info. So look for those letters and then turn them into the school counselor if that would be the right fit for you and your child. Okay.
We'll see you
next week.